Hi there, Mark here again. Welcome to this video, which is part one of my build guide for the Tamiya Agriois. And as you can see, the box is so big I can't get it in full frame in the camera, but there it is. Anyway, let's have a look at the box. As you can see, I think these are most of the parts that we're going to use to build the kit. And because there's so many more than a usual Tamiya kit, I think this one's going to take a little bit longer to do this build guide. But what I'll try and do is go as quickly as I can, but obviously try not to miss out some of the main points. So let's get on with it. So step one, we're going to be doing the gear assembly. Obviously it's time to open parts bag A. I recommend you put all the bits in a big pot if you can. Try not to lose them. And I've started to lay out some of the parts down the side, matching up with the diagram. Got to be careful because there are lots of different size bearings in this kit, and we don't want to be putting the wrong bearing in the wrong place. So let's get on with this bit. You'll also need to open one of these gear bags. You do get two with the kit, and would you believe one of them's a spare, so you got another set just in case you've got any problems with your gears wearing out, which I hope we don't. But yeah, so get this open, and we'll start by getting this part BA17, this bar, and I've already put on the circlip or F-clip or Jesus clip, whatever you want to call it, and then we need this aluminium part, which is like a splined nut, BA22, that just goes on there. Then we need to put on your 30-tooth gear, which is this one. As you can see, you've got the hex there that goes over that part, and then we need to hold this in place with another C-clip. Okay, that was quite tricky to get on there, so yeah, a bit of perseverance and that's on. Yeah, that's okay. So that's the first bit. As it said, that was A, so B is the 27 gear long. You just need an 850 bearing in that end. Then you need the plastic bearing holder, which goes in there. Just put a push fit, and then we need an 1150 bearing. Make sure you don't get these mixed up, but there's an 1160 which is very, very similar, as you can just see there. We've got these two gears left, and I think looking at the diagram it's this one, the 27-tooth gear short, so you can see it's got slightly different shape to it. Needs an 1150 in each side. Then you need plastic part A4. Make sure you get it the right way up. Looks like we've got an 1160 bearing that goes in here. And it's there. You need your two BA19 bars, which have got the flat on the end, you can see. And the flat goes into the plastic part. So we'll just put this one in first, which is part B, which goes in this hole. I'm going to put part A then into that bearing at the top. And you've got part C, again the cutout goes in first and fits in there. Okay, doke, so just going to get some grease on these parts and move on to step two, which is completing the gearbox. Basically we're just going to put the other half of the case, A2, onto that half. Make sure that you put your 1160 bearing in first. And you might notice that I've put some AW grease around that gearbox joint, just to hope we can keep out the dust and the dirt. So we're just going to pop this together, copying the orientation of the diagram. It's going to go on there. And then it's just fixing this together with these screws I've got laid out down the side here. I'll just show you which ones go where when I've put them together. I'm just going to put some thread lock on as well onto the ends of those threads. Okay, so you've got three 20mm black screws. One goes there, then you've got one in the case there and one in the case there, and then you've got the two longer silver ones go there and there. And obviously you've got the captive nuts that you just screw into. So yeah, on to step three. which it says is attaching the pinion gears, but obviously there's a lot more going on than just the pinion gears here. We're going to be fitting the motors to this motor plate, so get out the parts we need. Motor plate, actually these are called the motor plates, the cardboard type thing, that's gearbox plate. And let's get all the other stuff ready. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is attach the gear shaft, which is this bar, to the motor plate, and gearbox plate again. There's a countersunk screw that you need, and obviously you need to put that into the countersunk side of the plate, and then we're just going to screw this on. Just screw that in, and obviously we'll tighten it up in a sec. Obviously get your two motors and put on the motor plate, lining the holes up. So first of all, I'm going to get one of these small 6mm screws and put that in the fixed hole first. Obviously don't tighten this up fully yet. Another 6mm screw and a washer goes in the bottom slotted hole. Again, don't tighten that up yet. Put your grub screw in your pinion very lightly, and we'll just put this in place. Again, just finger tight for the moment, because we will have to set the position of that in a bit. Obviously I'll just do the same for the other motor. Okay, it should look something like this, and obviously that will give us, we can set the mesh of the gears with these adjusters here, and obviously that will give us a lot of options in the future if we want to change pinion sizes, so that's a good point. Okay, let's get the 40 gear on now, which is the last gear that's in that gear bag. 1150 bearing in the one side, 850 in the other. Now this is a bit of a strange setup, never seen anything like this before. So we've got three 5mm O-rings that go over this bar here, the gear shaft it says it is. Never seen that done before on a Tamiya, but there you go. And then you've got this really small, very thin shim that goes on there. Obviously, so the bearing's going to push up against that shim, and then simply put the gear on to that shaft. Okay, now we're going to have to set the gear mesh up, which I'm going to use a piece of plastic bag to place in between the pinion and the spur, and then tighten up the screws. The first thing I want to do though is I'm going to get this pinion set to be kind of central in the middle of that spur gear and give that a nip up. Then I'm going to use my bit of plastic to feed that in, and then I'm going to push this in so it's a nice snug fit. Yep, that looks about right, so I'm going to nip up these two screws now. Take the plastic back out. That should be, yeah, looks a pretty good mesh. So we'll just do the same on the other side, and that's this step finished. So in step 4 we're just going to put the motor assembly into the gearbox. So simply offer it up into that hole, make sure that shaft goes into the right hole, or the only hole. Feel it click home flush, and then to hold that on we've got this plate, which is a BA20, goes on here with two 3x10 machine screws. Then you've got BA23, which is your other metal piece, and that goes on with the 3x10 machine screw. And just to point out that these are heat sinks and don't actually hold the motors in place, we're going to do that with these three self-tapping screws, one in that hole, one in that hole, and one down there. So on to step 5, which is the bumpers, and time to open parts bag B and get all those parts, put them in a pot. So for each bumper you just need one of these metal bars, which is 57mm. I would recommend you measure that, make sure you get the right one, and two 10mm screws, machine screws, and I've already made up the front one. You're using parts G3, these side plastic parts. I'll show you how to do the back one. It's very simple, exactly the same, except for using these parts which are G4. The bumper itself is slightly angled backwards, so make sure you get it the right way around like this, and just slide that on your bar in there, and simply slide on the other side, and then that bar is what's going to hold them together once you get the two screws in. So just a simple case of putting the screw in each side. And just a little tip, what I've done is I've got a screwdriver into the one end and then screwed the other one in against that screwdriver, because otherwise the bar's just going to spin. So yeah, that's how I did it. Just nip that up, and that's your two bumpers done. On step 6, which is putting the frames together, or the side rails or the frame parts. So you need this big aluminium piece, and we're going to fit it on to the side rail. There's obviously a left and a right side, and basically you fit this on, line it up with the holes, and then you're going to need 7 of the 12mm machine screws and 3 of the 8mm machine screws, and obviously 10 of the flange nuts. And don't forget to put your thread lock onto the end of each of those screws before you do them up. Right, I've already made up the one side, and so you can see basically you've got 7 of the 12mm screws go in through the thick part of the bar, and where you've got these little plastic parts, the flat parts that you're putting through, there's one there, and one there. Those are the 8mm long screws, as you can see, attached with the flange nuts on the back. So I'll just get the other one done now, and that's the two sides made up. Step 7 is basically just fitting these 3 plastic parts, which is F5 and G2, onto each side of the frame rails, and these chrome ball joints, 6mm ball joints, that's going to be part of the suspension system. It's going to end up looking something like this. So you've got these plastic parts, and then on the other side you've got the 4 ball joints. So we'll just get those on. The one thing to point out here is just be careful, the screws are very slightly different lengths, so you just want to make sure you get the right one in the right place. So first of all, I'm going to get part G2, fix that in the middle there, and it's your two 15mm self tappers go in these top 2 holes. And the longer 18mm ones go in these 2 lower holes. And now for the F5 parts, you put 1 on each end, so I'll just show you doing the one. It's nice and simple, this one. It's just 2 15mm machine screws, 1 through there and 1 through there, and then we fix those on with 2 of the lock nuts, so you don't need any thread lock for this bit. So I'll just get this nipped up and do the other end. So with those pieces attached, I'm going to put the ball joints on. So it's like in a square shape at the bottom. You need your 3x12s, some thread lock, and the ball joint. So that's 1, 2, 3 and 4. And finally, don't forget the single 10mm screw that goes in this hole here. On step 8, which is attaching the gearbox and motor assembly onto that frame rail. This is the right hand side frame rail. You can see there's an R printed on that plastic part. First thing I'm going to do is get this part BB10, which is a spacer. You need to peel the backing off that because I think it's self-adhesive. Yep. And that needs to go over that hole there. I think like that. Then we're going to get a 3x18 tapping screw, put it through that last hole, and I think that's what's going to hold the top of the gearbox housing, and the other 3x18 self-tapper holds the bottom of the mount into that central hole there in the side rail. And with that mounted, we need to start adding these bars here, which are BB12s, 2 at the front and 2 at the back, and then there's a BB11 in the middle. So just to measure these to make sure, that's the 79, so these are the BB12s, so I need 4 of these, and those are going to be attached by the 27mm machine screws. So you've got 2 at the front and 2 at the back. So to finish this first part of the build guide, we're going to finish step number 9, which is basically putting the other half of the chassis on to put the chassis together. What you need to do is, don't forget that aluminium spacer. Again, it's self-adhesive, so take the backing off and put that on the top mount of the gearbox case there. Then we need to put the front and rear bumpers on. The front one's the shorter of the two, as you can see, and make sure that these lugs here are pointing towards the top. I think that just threads on to those aluminium rails that we've put on, or aluminium bars, at the front and at the rear. Get your other half. What I'm going to do, just hold it together, is get the longer 27mm screws and put one in the front and one in the back, just to hold it all together so I can get the other screws in. And put the screws in the second bar underneath, front and back. You got your 1 10mm screw that goes in this hole here into that central bar. Would you believe I missed out this bar, which goes beneath the motors? There's a hole there and obviously a hole on the other side. Not to worry, it's kind of the opposite of this one here. So we all make mistakes. I've never built one of these before. So get the 10mm screw and we'll pop that one in, and we won't talk about that then. Okay, so we'll just get the other side in. There you go, problem solved. And to complete this step, all we need are the 2 18mm self-tappers. One in there, and one in the bottom to hold the other side of the gearbox case. Just get those nipped up. And okay then, that's the end of step 9, and most of the kind of basic parts of the chassis and gearbox put together. So with that, I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for following along, and I hope to see you on part 2. Cheers, bye.